Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Live with Mel. Venezuelans have been facing economic uncertainty for a very long time. Now, while many people from Venezuela are fleeing the country, they're looking for some place where they can go in order to be protected and in order to live their life. Now, the Biden administration is designating temporary protective status for 18 months for Venezuelans who fled Venezuela because of the economic crisis. The humanitarian protection will allow Venezuelans to apply and remain in the United States lawfully. It will also allow them to work and live here without fear of being deported. Now, around 300,000 Venezuelans will actually be eligible for this protection. All they have to do is prove that they've been living in the US since March 8th. Now, many Venezuelans have been looking for protection. They have been looking for protection around the Western Hemisphere because they have been fleeing Venezuela. Venezuela right now is not in a good position, and there is rapid hunger all over Venezuela. Now, this protection is granted when a country is deemed unsafe or people may be persecuted from their own country. So when there's a crisis going on in a country, the United States has the opportunity to issue temporary protective statuses for people coming into the country. And essentially, that what it's saying is, hey, I know that things are really tough in your country, and if you go back, you'll face uncertainty. You may face hunger. You may face persecutions. There's a lot of things you may face. So we are going to give you this protection. And this protection was granted to Venezuelans who fled the country because of the complete economic uncertainty that they are facing within their own country. Now, Venezuelans have been fighting for this protection for a while now. And even during the Trump administration, they have been trying to get the protection. And it was met with a cold shoulder. Now, Homeland Security is saying that they will allow this protection until September 2022. So they're allowing people to come to the country. So the Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, is saying that Venezuelans will have the protection and it will be extended until September 2022, which will allow Venezuelans to come into the country, stay in the country, work legally, and not fear deportation. Now, one thing that people do fear when they come to the country, when they're fleeing the country, is will they go somewhere safe? And when they are there, will they be deported? Many people leave these situations, fear for their life, and then come into another situation where they're fearful. Now, another country that is actually offering Venezuelan protective status as well is Colombia. And it's looking as though places are opening their door to Venezuelans who are fleeing this economic uncertainty. Now, under President Trump, Venezuela, the country, was actually put under very, very hard sanctions because of what was going on with the government. Now, again, Venezuelans have been going through this economic crisis for a while now. And because of everything that's happening, many Venezuelans are going without food. They're going without safety. Crime has spiked uncontrollably, and people are looking for some safe place to go. There's reports saying that the older generation is telling the younger generation to flee the country for safety in order for them to find some kind of protection. Now, the economic uncertainty is something that many people heard about while it was happening, and Venezuela is a country that is still in economic uncertainty. So what are your thoughts, guys? What do you think about the United States and the Biden administration allowing the protective status for Venezuelans? Do you guys believe this is a step in the right direction? Do you believe that Venezuelans should have the protective status because of the economic uncertainty that is happening in Venezuela? Now, there's a lot of things happening in Venezuela at the moment and for the past couple of years. The Venezuelan president, Maduro, is someone that the United States has been placing sanctions on because they do not recognize his presidency. Maduro was the president, and in the last election, many people believe that he rigged the election in order to win, and he is not the rightful president. And in all actuality, many Western countries and the United States do not recognize him as a president because they say that he rigged the election. People are seeing Venezuela turn from a country with a democracy, to a country where it's now an authoritative ruler. Many people are saying that Maduro is turning into an authoritative ruler and that he has no place being in government. Now, because of this, because Maduro actually rigged the election, according to many people, the United States, under President Trump, issued extremely harsh sanctions during this time. Now, when sanctions are issued, one thing that happens is that it does affect the people. Sanctions are really put in place as a sense of punishment for governments doing things that are wrong. And because of the sanction, it does get hard for the people of Venezuela because it does put a hold on the economy. Now, with these sanctions going out and people starving in Venezuela, because in all honesty, there are times in Venezuela where there are just a food crisis, where there's no food available, there is a food shortage. And I'm not saying that food may be hard to get. I'm saying that there's no food and there is an actual food shortage. Now, while this was put in place by the Trump administration, President Biden has no thoughts about removing these sanctions. Now, he may change them. I know there is a task force who's going to be looking into whether or not these sanctions are hurting the people of Venezuela, but there is no talks of actually removing the sanctions because many people believe that these sanctions are necessary because Maduro is turning into an authoritative figure. He's turning into somebody who's not going to relinquish his power. Now, again, the Venezuelan people spoke. They saw that they were going through this economic crisis under Maduro's leadership. And when it came time to vote, the majority of people voted him out of office. They said they no longer wanted Maduro to rule them. They no longer wanted him to be president. And when that happened, he rigged the election and he remained in power. And that's when a lot of sanctions came into play as well. So Joanna says, it's great that we can provide temporary protection. And at the end of the day, these temporary protection is put in place to ensure that people fleeing horrible situations are actually in a position where they can prosper and be safe. I know a lot of times when it comes to immigration, Americans are at either end of the spectrums. When people are leaving places like Venezuela, where there's a food shortage, when there's an economic crisis, they're looking for some place safe to go because their own country has essentially turned on them. And if they go, they literally cannot go back to their own country. And when they're coming to places like the United States, when they're coming to places like Colombia, because Colombia is giving them protections as well, they're looking for some place where they can be safe from the tragedies that are happening within their own country. Because again, this is not people just leaving because they want to experience another country. These are people leaving because if they do not leave, they can face persecution, they can face starvation, and they can face extreme violence. Now, President Biden's team has issued this protective status. And we do know that prior to the last week in office, President Trump was against the protective status. He did not want to issue the protective status for Venezuelans. But in President Trump's last week, he did issue an executive order putting out some type of protective status for Venezuelans. And when he did put out the protective order, he put it out, but there was no clear path on how people could apply. So many people were left in limbo because President Trump did not put a way for people to apply. President Trump signed the executive order in his last week, but we're seeing that Biden has extended this and there is now a path for people to apply and get the protective status. Now, again, this protective status would make people living here in the United States who fled Venezuela, they would give people the ability to work, to live, and to be here legally, and they will not face deportation. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you believe that this was the right thing to do, that the protective status for Venezuelans are something that Americans should have done a long time ago? Now, I know when we talk about Venezuela, I know when we talk about countries in South America, many people say that Americans should not stick their nose in people's business. I've heard this many times about what's happening in Venezuela and with Americans. I know some of the sanctions that America issued was very unpopular, especially with the younger generation in America. But as we're seeing, many Venezuelans are suffering and they are coming to the United States and they are coming to Colombia and they are fleeing and they are looking for places to live where there is food security, where there are jobs, and where they can live peacefully without threats of violence. And hopefully with this protective status for the next 2 years, they will be able to do that. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, whether you're watching this live or whether you're tuning in later. Let me know what your thoughts are on the protective status that was issued for Venezuelans fleeing the economic crisis in Venezuela. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I will see you tomorrow morning bright and early.